Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Shifts and Ladders with Ryan Robinson. I have my first guest on the new podcast here today. I have the host of The Joker's Shadow, Caleb McCleskey, on the phone today, on the mic tonight. We decided to get something together, and I'm excited to have you, man. How you doing?
Hey, I appreciate being here, man. Glad I could be here.
Yes, first of all, his voice is like super deep if you haven't noticed. So he has the podcast voice and everything. And he's been podcasting, what you say, about a year or two so far.
It's going
Um,
on 3 years now, so just
oh man.
yeah, it's I've been doing it since like my freshman year of college, man. I'm being a senior in a few months, so just it's a work in progress, man. It's a work in progress.
Nice, nice. And he's up to almost he's going to be doing season 4 here fairly soon, if not now, by the time you listen to this podcast. But you know, we kind of bumped into each other and at a family gathering,
Yeah,
and I'm like, "You
family
pod?" I said, "You had a
get
pod?" I had a
together.
pod. I'm like, "Oh man, we should just like link up," because we talks about a lot of things around the individual's perspectives and different worldviews, right?
hmm
So, for those who haven't heard your podcast, and we'll link it in the show notes, tell everybody listening what the Joker's Shadow is all about.
Yeah, so the Joker's Shadow is kind of like I call it a life podcast, pretty much. I'm a journalism student at Ohio University, and I've done a news podcast, I've done a sports podcast, and it's like, let me just do a life podcast, just get away from all the sports and the news and stuff for a little bit. And pretty much I bring on my friends, my family, my coworkers, and we talk about different topics from like I guess like episode 2 is like a prime example of like the friends and their importance. I just did an episode recently about the importance of like the truth in the world, the lies of the world, and the secrets of the world. And I
Mhm.
just feel like having like those topics like really brings people together. And it just, for me, it's always, I like learning, man, and bringing on different people and getting their perspectives just really, it helps me learn and just sees different sides of people. So that's really what the podcast is to me.
Man, that's amazing. I've got to listen to a few of your pods, and I think you got some great perspectives. And this is one thing, particularly you being in journalism. One of the things I'm find very curious about is that in order to have, and you can correct me if I'm wrong,
hmm
effective journalism, you need to be able to depict both sides of the story. And usually
Yeah.
there is an angle,
hmm
but effective journalism creates a level of, for lack of a better words, objectivity,
hmm
or should. But there's always some kind of spin. But I find now that you don't get that in a
No.
lot of journalism these days. So, what do you think is some of the challenges that come along these days with journalism? I think maybe the integrity might be gone, or is it for
Yeah.
clicks? Is it for whatever? What is it?
Um, I feel like for me, it's like definitely like what you said, getting both sides of the story is so important because you just don't know how that story can impact not only the people who view it, but the people who are in that story. Like, I guess an
Mm-hmm.
example of that would be like if I was doing a story about like a tornado that like hit Columbus or something, and I just did a story about the tornado. It's not just about the tornado, it's about what were the damages, who were the people that were affected, how does that affect
Mm-hmm.
businesses and the economy. And that's just a tornado. Like we could talk about politics, we could talk about sports, we could talk about culture, even we could talk about religion. Is kind of a toss up sometimes in journalism, but more times there are some topics that journalists tend to stay away from. But I feel like
Mm-hmm.
getting both sides of the story is so important. And I feel like today, and this is something that I've taken away from being at OU and the Scripps College, is that fake news has become such a big thing because of social media, because of television, because the advancements in technology give not only journalists, but basically every single person who has access to a cellular device, an iPad,
Mm-hmm.
a computer, some sort of technology, they can make their own content and basically just put that out there. And for some of those creators, they don't have a care in the world about who sees that and who that might impact. Like going
Mm-hmm.
back to tornado example, like if someone just put out on their Twitter and there might be a huge creator in Columbus that a tornado has hit Columbus and thousands upon thousands of people in Columbus are seeing it, but it's like there's no tornado. So not only are
Mm-hmm.
you stressing out those people thinking that there is a tornado, but you're also lying to them. And because you're lying to those people, that hurts the credibility of journalists and other creators who are trying to give out the truth to other people. So I feel like for me, I mean, I'm still in school. I really can't talk about all this much because I'm not in the professional field yet. But it's like those are the type of
Mm-hmm.
things that new journalists or people who are putting out content really need to learn sometimes, just so that they are not
Mm-hmm.
negatively impacting those people's lives in the wrong way.
Got it. So what motivates someone? Is it? I guess if you're going into journalism to
Mm-hmm,
share news, or you're having the vehicle of the internet to share a particular worldview,
mm-hmm,
what is the motivation for someone to mislead someone? Again, I'm just because the reason why I'm bringing this up,
mm-hmm,
because it's going to lead to our topic, is that what I recall a while ago in history class,
mm-hmm,
I learned that investigative journalism
mm-hmm,
kind of started really getting in its place during like the Vietnam era, because there was a lot of people that did not know what was really happening overseas. And that ended up being portrayed around the same time we had civil rights around Vietnam and other, world things happening, right? Protests, I think, all those kinds of things, right? So, and like I said, if I'm wrong, man, you can correct me. Now,
Nah, you're right
I
on the
want to make
money.
sure I'm good. Okay, all right. Listen, I was studying now. I know a few things. I did go to school. And so one of the things I'm finding is that at one time, the era of journalism had more of a noble cause behind it,
Mm-hmm,
right? Because there was a sense of justice to keep not just politicians,
mm-hmm,
but government systems and financial institutions to be able to do and be held accountable because someone was watching them and studying them and making sure that the truth did get out.
mm-hmm.
Now, the truth is getting muddied. So, what is the motivation that you think, and again, that you think could be keeping people from really seeking the truth instead of putting their own truth out there as to appease individuals with that particular worldview?
As much as it pains me to say it, but it's clicks, man. It really is clicks. Like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
getting, how do I put this? Getting the human eye, getting the attention from people is really how content today is, how content stays alive, pretty much, in terms of
Mm-hmm.
like if a person sees whatever your content is, looks at it, likes it, shares it, people are sometimes willing to do things that are not only not true but also harmful to others. Like I think I've seen a few YouTube videos lately where people are putting their body in harm's way just to get clicks and stuff. And like, if you want to do that, that's fine. But it's like, it's because you don't know when you can seriously get hurt. And
Mm-hmm.
it's
Mm-hmm.
not worth putting your body or your life on the line just to get a few hundred, few thousand views. Like, you can do that from like, you can do that from anything. I feel like today with entertainment online, you can see people making cooking videos, you see people making houses and stuff. You see people surprising their parents with like gifts and stuff. You see people talking, literally communicating, like how me and you are having this conversation right now. There are safer ways to put out content. And it's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and can people do it? Yeah. I mean, nobody's going to stop them. But at the end of the day, it's like, is it truly worth it to like really put that content out there with certain things on the line? And
Mm-hmm.
at least with like, because I feel like what you said about accountability really is true to the point about how there are some organizations, some groups or individuals out there who are not held accountable for certain things. And
Mm-hmm.
when those groups or individuals are not held accountable, it's like, so basically anybody can get away with anything. Like we don't have certain laws or certain provisions or consequences put in our societies, how our governments are run, and these people can get away with these things. And I feel like for journalists who cover those topics with investigative journalism, or even journalists who cover judicial stuff with like crimes being in the courtrooms, it's the stuff like that that even though as hard as it is with not only trying to get that story but also the backlash behind it, because what's a good one, like um I guess like basically any like courtroom story necessarily, there are going to be
Mm-hmm.
like two sides to that story. There are going to be people who read that and are like, yeah, I totally get what the story is saying. These are the facts. This is the truth. Then there are going to be the other people who are like, no, this person should not be in prison. They should not have these consequences. And journalists today, it's like the journalistic world is having a constant battle with trying to please everybody they possibly can, but also not get in anybody else's way or disappoint anybody. But
Mm-hmm.
not everybody can be happy. Not everybody's going to want to see what journalists are able to do in terms of what stories we're putting out, what information we're putting out. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and as difficult as that is, like, I feel like there are many professions around the world that have to deal with that. Like, not every doctor or surgeon is going to be able to save everybody who's been in an incident or are having some critical condition or something like that. Not every um, contractor or person who's making a house, they're not going to be able to give everybody exactly what they want. They could be close. They could be so close to perfect, but they can't please everybody because there's always going to be one person who has a different idea or a different solution or some counteractive statement that's going to make it seem like that they don't agree with it. So I feel like
Mm-hmm.
with journalism today, it's like journalists, I feel like people who stick to true journalism, what I mean by that is not putting those opinion pieces out there, not putting stuff that is false, sticking to the truth,
Mm-hmm.
the facts. And if they get something wrong, they got something wrong. They're being accountable for it. They're saying, hey, we got this wrong. It's that reporter and that station or organization who's through them. And just stick it to the
Mm-hmm.
facts. I mean, I feel like if you're able to do that, because this all ties back to the original point, is that it's not always about getting stuff out as soon as possible. It's not getting about stuff out as
Mm-hmm.
soon as it happens. People, well, not people, well, some people are able to know when something is true or not. So, in order to do
Right.
that, you need credibility. You need photos, you need
Mm-hmm.
videos, you need sources, you need citations. You are going to need certain things to make it seem like that information is true. And
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
what's more times than not happens is that when we have these accounts that are putting out fake information or like parodies or like information that may be true but has like false words in it, it makes it hard for people who are trying to do true journalism to stay true to what they're doing. So it's like
Mm-hmm.
two sides of like
Mm-hmm.
the same coin. Not really though, but people are just, it's hard to try and do true journalism when there is that much misinformation out there in the world.
You know, you bring up a point that I was like, you said it is like two sides of a coin, but honestly, what it is it's you're instead of calling the heads and the tails, you
Yeah.
just change the name of it,
Yep.
right? Right, and it's like, oh no, that's actually tails, and it's
Hmm.
heads really. You're like, and you say it enough times, people are going to start to believe it. And honestly, that's actually someone's opinion.
Yeah.
And what's crazy about it, because I know, and there used to be a section for opinion pieces,
Yeah.
right? Where people labeled, this is my opinion. And now what it does, you can't even find that because someone's opinion is intertwined in there with the facts to get a specific leaning of an audience person. And, you know, I think what happens is when we mix facts up with feelings, we have a way to be able to, I don't think it's intentional. But I think it is just a consequence of being emotionally tied to what is being written about. Because either there's a monetary thing involved with it. There's pressure because they have a particular audience that they have to appease. Because essentially their eyes, their attention pays the bills for them, you know. And I don't know if there's even the internet. I think you brought up you just said something like a tornado happened. Like if something were to happen, like there's outlets like I'll just use Reddit for example.
Yeah.
Like Reddit is probably one of the worst places to get like any information because someone could take a photo, say something, and the subreddit is filled with people who have an opinion. And I don't think it's a bad thing that the internet leveled the playing field when it came to accessibility and communication. But what I do recognize is that there's individuals who are never taught how to properly utilize a microphone.
Yeah.
So you know how to communicate, all that kind of stuff. There's some people who get a microphone and they talking all day long, right? And they're not communicating well. They holding it all over the place. Like, you know, there's people like, okay, you've never talked to anyone. You've never talked to anyone in public speaking, but you're really good at just typing something, right?
Yeah.
And again, this isn't something, it's not a bashing of anyone, but it is just the facts. Like, let's be honest, there's some people who just don't know how to yield that kind of responsibility when it comes to communicating, which boggles my mind. I mean, I know the people that are afraid to do public speaking, but I don't think people understand how much misinformation can actually mislead people.
Yeah.
Because like you could say the wrong thing, it goes viral, and viral doesn't necessarily mean the truth. It just means popular.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of responsibility that comes with that. So
yeah. Because I would say like,
yeah,
because this is like, me and my dad talked about this when I really got into podcasting. It's like, and I basically agree with him on this. Like, I feel like it is so important that everybody has a voice, has the ability to speak their opinions, but it's just how you use it. That is what dictates if you're using it right or wrong. Now, right or wrong can mean so many different things in today's world. But if you're doing something that's like not, if you're doing something that's going to harm somebody else, then you're obviously in the wrong. Like to physically, mentally, or emotionally harm somebody, you're in the wrong. There's no other way around that. Like,
yeah.
So yeah, everybody should have their voice. I believe in that. I still do it to this day. It's just how you use it.
Yeah, and I think that's most people have to get their arms around that because that it is a responsibility. There's a quote that was said. I'm trying to pull it up. I wish I had it up on top of my head, but the person said, I believe the author of the book, is Greg McKeown. And he is the author of this book called Essentialism, The Disciplined Pursuit of Less But Better. And the premise of the book is that we have to reduce life down to its most essential things. If it's not a hell yes, it's an automatic hell no, so to speak, right? Um, so, so one of the things he brings up is that now it's more difficult than ever to find out what is essential because we are inundated with opinions and have opinion overload because social media has given everyone a microphone to share their opinion, no matter how succinct it is or incoherent, coherent or incoherent that argument is. So again, it's just one of the things that he just says, like, hey, it's hard to filter out the noise from the truth. So you need to spend more time seeking the truth. So when you hear something that might be untrue, you have done enough diligence to find out what's the truth and what is not. So basically owning your own responsibility of getting the truth. That's essentially what he's getting at.
Yeah.
But there's a lot to it. But with that being said, I think this leads to another point of being countercultural. Now, these days, being a person who actually holds tension for one side and the other is actually a countercultural concept. Most people think you have to be red or blue. You got to pick a side on everything. There was a chart around the time President Obama was in the first election, and that was, you consider him like the first social media influenced president, right? And one of the things that they said was the comments based on his campaigning were more of the middle. Like some people, like, they might have been Republican, but they had some, like, they had some, like, oh, I like him. I like Obama. I like a couple things. So one of the things is they took all that data, and this is again early social, like Twitter days, all that kind of stuff, when it was Twitter. And they basically did a bell curve to kind of see how everything was based on comments and all that good stuff. So pretty much, whether you are identified as a Democrat or Republican or independent, a lot of the comments kind of were middled. Like, it was kind of in the middle. So if we did a bell curve, most of it typically is in the middle, where it's kind of the law of averages, right in the middle. Everybody's got the 80-20 rule. So most of the stuff is kind of in the middle. And it started in the second election of President Obama, and toward the end of his presidency, you start to see this mountain of common ideals start to pick one side or the other. So it started to become more radical, because the algorithm would just give individuals not just one side, not just both sides, but just one side, and continue to feed that perspective over and over and over again. There's a great documentary called The Social Dilemma on Netflix. If you watch that, you need to make sure you're ready, because you will look at social media different. But one of the things that I'm going to talk about, we kind of expound upon this. What makes being able to have balance in your opinions so countercultural? I listen to your podcast, and you hold tension for both of these ideas, like for being an introvert and being an extrovert, whether you have both, there's ideas and positives in both if you know how to use them correctly and be authentic to yourself in your latest pod. But why do you think so many people have challenges dealing with tension of both and have to choose either or?
I feel like, I think honestly, like, to put it in a pop culture kind of way, like, because backstabbing exists, like, like, because people backstabbing, double agents, whatever you want to call it. I feel like people who are, and that goes to trust as well. It's like, so I guess if we're taking that episode, for example, you got introverts and you got extroverts. And if you're in the middle, trying to be neutral, some people are going to be like, okay, they're with us, but they're also with the enemy, the opposing side, whatever you want to call it. So we don't know if they're exactly all in or they're all out. And
I see.
I feel like with some people that can rub them the wrong way sometimes, just because you don't really know if they're going to be with you or against you. There's always that possibility. It's always a 50-50 toss up for people who say that they're neutral or they're in the middle. And I feel like sometimes it really depends on the topic. Like I feel like introverts and extroverts, it's like it's simple. It's kind of like a topic that should not have a whole lot of tension on it. Like you're either a person who likes being very outgoing or you're like a person who wants to be inside sometimes. Like there should not be that much tension with that topic. But like if we're talking Democrats and Republicans with everything that goes into politics with your views, your ideas, and impacts that come off of those groups, that could probably rub people the wrong way if you are in the middle sometimes, because your views, some of them are with them. It's that other 50% that bothers them because you're not on that same side anymore. You're, and in all honesty, like even though there's red and blue, there's always that purple group in the middle. Like it's going to be that there are more times than not going to be three groups when it comes to, if it comes to politics, if it becomes people who are a LeBron James fan or a Michael Jordan fan, there are going to be everybody who is going to be in the middle. People are going to be like, I don't know, but there may be some people who are like, I've never seen basketball before, so I have no idea. And there might be people from both sides being like, well, you have to pick one. How are you going to do that to somebody? If they don't know who LeBron James and Michael Jordan are, you can't force them into a group. You will probably have to give them, like if you were to ask me, like if I was talking to somebody who did not know basketball, I would probably give them the same amount of time it took me to grasp that idea and actually understand and know both of those players, what they've done or what they're still doing, and then pick a side. But then again, that's not me. Like, if people are Jordan fans or LeBron fans, that's their opinion. That's their idea of those players. And I feel like the middle ground is just, some people think it's, and I sometimes feel this way when I go to the middle ground sometimes, it feels like a safe haven sometimes. It feels like a place where you should not be involved with what's going on. Because honestly, sometimes when I get into some debates with my friends and family about sports, foods, politics, culture stuff, news, video games, whatever it might be, sometimes I want to be in the middle ground because I want to get involved. I don't want to be a part of whatever's going on. That's like, that's just me personally. Like,
right.
But at least in terms of this topic, the middle ground is, it's people just sometimes can't accept it just because of there's that 50% of that person's ideas that are going to go the other way. And for that group who's on that opposing side, they can't accept it because they're not with them. They're against them.
Yeah. You know, you brought up the LeBron and Michael Jordan, the James and Jordan conversation. And I think that is going to, I think these kind of conversations come up in critical points when it comes to like legacy, for
Mm-hmm.
example. It is what's the last stand of someone's viewpoint, someone's platform, and that is where you start finding the tension that you're talking about come through, and some people just don't want to pick sides because there's so many factors to like the contribution. Like we'll just I'm stick with the example because this is I literally had this conversation about 2 weeks ago at work. There's era differences, right? The era of basketball in the 90s is way different than the era of basketball that LeBron is in now, let alone what he started in. He had Kobe, he had Dirk Nowitzki, he had
D Wade was there,
D
KG was
Wade,
there.
Shaq was still
Yeah.
playing. You had Paul Pierce, you had Ray Allen. Like there were so many guys who I don't even know. I was like Gary Payton was still playing. I don't think he was. I don't know if he was playing at that point in time, but you had these eras of basketball players that exemplified a particular time period, right? Michael Jordan. I mean, people were like the fouls in the 90s were like you got almost punched in the face. Almost, it looks like. Now you can get, they added what's the flopping, and they've added so many rules to fouling to make sure that someone doesn't get hurt these days. You can't say they're soft. I don't know. I don't play basketball, but what I will say is things have changed.
Yeah.
Things have changed, and the kind of ball that's played now is way different. I would even gather to say the level of athleticism amongst just your bench warming player is better than what it was in the 90s. Like there's a lot more talented guys these days than what we see now. I mean, Vince Carter. Think about when he was doing the dunks between the legs, right? And that was the biggest, slam dunk contest probably ever at this point, because everything is now kind of whack. But now you see people doing what Vince Carter was doing as a way to just get into the slam dunk contest. Like they're doing it without even thinking about it. And it's that principle of like, as soon I can't remember when, might have been the 1950s, 1940s, whenever someone completed a mile under, I think it's under 4 minutes or something like that. And then a few months later, somebody else broke the record. And then you just started getting all these people breaking a mile, a sub 4 minute mile, I believe. Because one person did it. After that, the whole bar was set different because there was one person that broke it. And now because that one person broke it, there's people that know it's possible. So they're going to work toward what they see now. And I think that's what happened with LeBron. I mean, just different age of ball. But there's so many different factors. That's what I'm getting back to. God, I went off topic. There's so many factors that play into that. Like you just can't say LeBron, Jordan now. Like, no, like we can't. I mean, you can't. I mean, you just can't. It's a challenge to do that. And but to be able to have that moment of clarity to say, let's look at the whole picture instead of looking at just the two individuals themselves, stacking them up one another side by side. That in itself is countercultural. No one wants to see the big picture. yet everyone has their opinion to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I just find that it's crazy. Like it, this wisdom doesn't have its place that it once did because opinions are louder.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is kind of, frustrating that it's countercultural to be truth, to seek the truth, but cultural to follow a lie,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So,
because I would say,
yeah.
because I talked about this with a very, very old episode with one of my friends from school, is that I think with your point that you just said about how following a lie can be cultural, is that
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, unfortunately, not everybody's able to handle the truth. Not everybody's able to look the truth in the face and be like, okay, this is
Mm-hmm.
facts. It really can't be changed unless it's something you have control over. And back to my dad and even my grandmother, it's like when it comes to an individual, some of the things you can control are your character, your behavior, how you act around others, your language, your tone. It's the stuff like that that you can control. And sometimes when you are acting a certain way and somebody calls you out for it, you're getting mad at them for calling you out when they just spoke the truth to your face.
Mm-hmm.
Now, some people get defensive. I get defensive sometimes. I've been defensive since I knew what the term defensive was. Do I still do it today? Yeah. But I make sure that I try to control that because I need to process what has just been told to me. Like back to the LeBron Michael Jordan thing. If somebody is saying some nonsense about one player or the other, and I get defensive about it, that person could be saying the truth about that. Or if somebody's like saying, last year the Kansas City Chiefs won, and then somebody's saying, no, they didn't, that makes no sense. Why are you getting defensive about the truth, about factual information? And
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
going back to the behavior thing, it's like if somebody calls you out for something and you're getting defensive about it, sometimes if your friends telling you that or your parents telling you that, they're putting you in check. They're putting you in your place so you don't do that out in the real world and look like a fool. And it's just because I see it sometimes. I mean, being at college, being back at home with some people, it's like some people still have not grasped that sometimes you have to accept the truth. You have to accept reality, what's going on, what's happening right in front of you at that moment in time. And
Mm-hmm.
for me, I feel like I try to like take everything as a learning moment. I take
Mm-hmm.
every single day, every single hour, this podcast is a learning moment. I remember the last time I've been a guest on a podcast. Like, this is always going to be a learning moment. This is always a learning moment. And
Yeah. Yeah.
it's like, if people, because this goes back to accepting the truth and being accountable for your actions. Like, if
Mm-hmm.
you're not able to accept the truth, then you're only going to be able to accept lies. You're only going to be able to accept people lying to your face about something because it's not, you only want to hear when you want to, when it's going on. You don't want to hear about the stuff that you don't want to. And it's unfortunate, but it's the world we live in. Not everybody is going to have the humbling aspect of themselves to stop and actually listen. Because sometimes listening and staying quiet is the most powerful form of speech. That's why when you see certain athletes don't talk smack to another player who is talking smack, more times than not, that
Mm-hmm.
following game or that next matchup, we know who the winner is. We know who comes out on top
Mm-hmm.
most times. It's the person who stays quiet, man. It's being humble. It's knowing that
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you have to accept what happens when it happens, but at the same time, you just got to move forward with it. If you make a mistake, learn from it, grow from it. Make sure that it does not happen again, so it shows that you took that moment with some serious guts. I could say another word
Mm-hmm.
right now, but you gotta just like, you just gotta learn. You just gotta grow. You just can't. If you only hear what you want to hear, you're not going to get very far in life, unfortunately. Like,
Yeah.
if somebody was like trying to buy a house and they only wanted to hear that the house was like $5,000, when in reality it's like $100,000 or $200,000, come on, man. I'm
Yeah.
blabbing a little
You
bit,
know,
but like I spoke my piece about that.
no, but you know what? I think there's a part to this that people, I think that we ignore
Hmm.
is the truth about ourselves.
That's so true.
Because it's impossible to be, and I'm speaking to the choir here
Hmm.
for myself, but like being the only way you can accept the truth is if you're truthful to yourself. And if you and if you're not willing to be transparent with you, there's no way that you can ask anyone else to be. You have an inability to accept any kind of truth because you have not accepted the truth about yourself. So say if you have an issue, if you're you've been drinking or you got like a
Hmm.
if you're a shopaholic and you don't want to hear you're a shopaholic, 9 times out of 10 you're not going to stop shopping. Like if you
Yeah.
don't admit you need help. Well, they say the first thing to accomplish or get yourself in the healing process of any addiction or problem is one, acknowledging
Hmm.
that you have an issue. And what's dangerous about that is that most people are not willing to see themselves the way others see them objectively. I think we're kinder to ourselves because we're us. You know
We
what I'm
try to have
saying?
that
Like
positive mentality. We try not to bring ourselves down. We try not to accept the faults in our own self.
ex- exactly. Like if I got something in my nose and someone says, "Hey," and I'm gonna say this is one of the things that bothers the heck out of me
Hmm.
is that if I got something on my eyelid or
Hmm.
something in my nose and no one tells me, I get pissed off at that. Excuse
Hmm.
my language. But because the thing is, what's happening is you're looking at it,
Hmm.
but I can't see myself outside of me.
Hmm.
Now, if I have given a history of me ignoring when someone has given me a like, hey, bro, you might want to,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? If I
Do
ignore
this,
it,
do this.
yeah, if I ignore that, then it's more than likely that they're never going to to help me out again. But and I got a funny story about this. I took a class at the at Miami University for
Hmm.
all those who are Miami. I knew I was just trying to find a plug that I
Hmm.
could get you with it. Anyway, I was in Black World Studies class,
Hmm.
and we had conditioning early that Tuesday morning, and I didn't sleep all that great. So we get
Okay.
up, we run, we get food, everything. So I'm sitting in this class, and I'm nodding off.
Hmm.
I'm nodding off, and my roommate, he said next to me, he said, "Hey man, like, wake up." I'm like,
Hmm.
all right, all right. And then he hit me again because I'm like I'm like on the
Hmm.
teeter tot, right? Like my head was
Yeah.
I was about to be head banging
Hmm.
real quick, like I was losing it. And he's like, hey, man, like stand up or something. I said, bruh. I said, leave me alone, man. I'm good. And my teammate was in the same class. He said, let him go. He told him, let me go.
Mm-hmm.
And man, it wasn't even 5 minutes later,
Yeah.
man, I was like this, and I was like, boom, 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 in the class, and my teammates in the class were like, oh, and the teacher was cracking up. He stopped teaching, and he said, Ryan, why don't you go take a walk right quick and come back, get you some air.
Mm-hmm.
Get you some water and you come back to class. Give yourself a few minutes. It was one of the most embarrassing things I've experienced
It happens.
in school. Now, this is the thing though. I ignored the help.
Mm-hmm.
So I got what I deserved because I ignored it because I thought that I couldn't handle what was really being said to me, that you probably need to do something different.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the time, it's usually our own ego
Mm-hmm.
and our own pride that actually keeps us from taking the advice of individuals who care about us, who want the best for us, and we end up throwing them off to the side because we think we know ourselves better than they see us.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's probably one of the most difficult things to recognize, is that you may not know yourself as well as you think you do. And until you even acknowledge that,
Mm-hmm.
you can't get any wisdom. So I kind of want to, I'm talking about it, but let's kind of expound upon that thought of like being transparent with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Even like most people just want to talk about the good stuff, but there's some stuff that we have challenges with that are ugly, that are bad. And we got to be able to see those things too. You can't be Pollyanny. So let's kind of talk about that a little bit. Just
Mm-hmm.
how we can, especially with our podcasts and the opportunities we have when we interact with people, how can we be better at giving people the truth without using it as a weapon to keep them bound? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And again, we're not going to cure anything,
No.
but I just do want us I want us to kind of ideate on it, because I think it's important, because the with what we both talk about in our areas
Mm-hmm.
is a shift of perspective and improvement. And how can we elevate and grow from the fact that if we're not honest,
Yeah.
there's no way you can grow from that, right? Or if you're not honest, you can't grow.
That's
Yeah, I mean,
interesting. Like, because the truth, everything comes with the pros and cons. The truth can be used as a weapon. Like, you can speak down upon somebody. You can use their truth as blackmail or like some crazy stuff like that. But I feel like the best way, and I've tried to do this sometimes with people who I know personally, it's like when, let me think about this. Like, when I try to like talk to somebody about the truth or check one of my friends sometimes, I'm always
mhm,
like, okay, I'll let the moment happen. I'll let it go. I'll let them do what they want to do. Let them do it. But then once that moment is over, I'll be like, hey, can I like talk to you for a second? Bring them over. It'll just be us and be like, hey, so like, what the heck was that? What are you
mhm,
doing?
mhm,
Why did you just do that? You're not only embarrassing yourself, you're embarrassing everybody else who was in that room with you.
mhm,
And if they don't know what happened, I'm going to explain it to them. I'll be as respectful as possible. I'm going to keep my tone in check. I'm going to make sure I don't got an attitude. try to. It happens sometimes, depending on how bad it is, and just
Yeah.
be like, what are you doing? Why did you just do that? And if I gotta like explain it to him, I will. But like, I feel like being calm and being like sentimental and also being give that person, depending on what it is, you can kind of give them the benefit of the doubt. Because if they don't realize what they did, well, that brings up an interesting story actually. So funny enough, I was in the second grade. I was at a Christian school. I was with my friends. We were doing a rhyming game. We were doing like what rhymes with cow, what rhymes with car, and then like one of my friends was like, what rhymes with witch, like the witch, the he.
Mm-hmm.
I was
Mm-hmm.
going down the list and I was like, A doesn't work. That next letter, I said it in
Uh-huh.
class, like out loud. Room got quiet. My teacher was like, Caleb, come here for a second. And I'm like, yeah. And then she asked me, do you know what that word is? And I'm like, no. I was like, not even, what was I in my second grade? I was like 8, 9, something like
Mm-hmm.
that. And she was like, okay, well, just don't do that again. And I'm like, okay. Go back over to my friends and they're like, why did you do that? And I'm like, I had no idea what that word was. So
Right.
it's just having sometimes benefit of the doubt goes into play. Like if you got like a young kid or like a person who's not from that area or
Mm-hmm.
something like that, I feel like that kind of goes into play sometimes. But when you got like a
Mm-hmm.
grown person who gets a little too comfortable sometimes, that's when you got to do that, and you got to do it. If it's like your friend or your family member, sometimes you got to be straight up with them. You got to lay the hammer down and be like, hey, that was not cool. Don't do that again. Apologize to the people in there. If it's
Mm-hmm.
a person you don't know, it's like you just got to play it safe sometimes because you never know what that other person could do. You never know. Strangers are strangers for a reason. And
Mm-hmm.
you just got to be calm with it, man. And also like think about that person's feelings too. I feel like sometimes we don't think about that sometimes. And we're unfortunately in this day and age now where some people don't think that mental health or emotional health is important. And
Mm.
sometimes
That's a good point.
you just got to think about that too. And so for me, it's like, okay, I'm going to explain to you the truth, but I'm going to do it in a way to where you not only understand what you did and why you're in the wrong, but I'm not going to put you down for it. We all make mistakes. It happens. And like I said earlier, and it's learning from that. As long as you're
Mm-hmm.
accountable for it, I'm not really going to have an issue with it. But you got to like know that it's not cool. You don't look cool doing it. I don't know why you decided to do that in the first place. But
Mm.
for me, it's doing it in a calm, respectful manner with whoever I'm with, pretty much, or wherever I'm at.
Yeah. And I think you said something that's really important is that if you have to have a relationship with them to be able
Mm-hmm.
to share that kind of information.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I don't know you, like I'm gonna look at you, I'm like, they just really they
Yeah,
just
like,
realize that they just made a fool of themselves.
mm-hmm.
And then I'll be like, you know, I might be. I'm like, hey, get your homeboy. You know, you know what I'm saying? You'll say something that'll be like, you can be kind, right, and tell the
Mm-hmm.
people around them if they're not aware of it. But you would hope their friends would tell them the truth too,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And I'm finding now that because individuals are not willing to tell themselves the truth,
Mm-hmm.
they have the inability to tell other people the truth because the truth hurts.
It does.
There is there's an example that I read a ton of books. So like there's a name is Dr. Henry Cloud gives this example
Mm-hmm.
of hurting and harming someone. He says the dentist hurts me when you go. They
Mm-hmm.
have to do all the cleanings. They have to go. They got to check the gums. They got to do. They're pretty rough. Like
Yeah.
when you get done from the dentist, like you're not if you did a good job, the 6 months or whenever the last time you've
Mm-hmm.
been taking care of your teeth and saw them last, is going to hurt. It could hurt worse, but it's going to hurt because why? They got a job to do to ensure that things are in shape, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, if the dentist came in and gave you candy and didn't do anything to clean your teeth, that's harming you
Mm-hmm.
because that stuff, the sugar, the all the things that you're not supposed to have,
Mm-hmm.
may taste good in the moment, but they're really harming you long term.
Mm-hmm.
So you'd rather deal with short term pain and difficulty to deal with a shifted life perspective than take something that's easy, tastes good, and all that good stuff, but then have to deal with accelerated and complex consequences because you just wanted it to be easy.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just getting this. I'm a bit older than you. Um, but what I do notice now, and it works in sports, but I don't know if it always makes the jump over to real life,
Mm-hmm.
is that you always want to do the hard thing first. Because if you do it when it's hard, just like the side of a coin, it's going to get easier later.
Mm-hmm.
But if you think of anything that you've had to hold out for and you're like, man, you know what? I'm just going to do this tomorrow because you want it easy now, it adds up because you don't know what tomorrow's going to bring.
Mm-hmm.
So you just made something that could have been taken care of in a few minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Now take over an hour
Mm-hmm.
plus everything else on top of that you have to do. I'm guilty of doing that
Oh, procrastination's
a
horrible.
lot.
Procrastination is
Oh man.
terrible.
And the thing is, I think that's what it roots from, is
Mm-hmm.
not being honest with yourself about what needs to get done. And if you don't do it, you're still gonna have to do it,
Mm-hmm.
right? And we all know this up here.
Mm-hmm.
But for whatever reason, and I don't like saying that forever, for whatever reason, because it gives an scapegoat.
Mm-hmm.
There's no responsibility taken. And that's fairly new to me to say that. But I find that if you don't if you keep giving yourself an out to not do
Mm-hmm.
something, you'll never do it. And on top of that, you'll blame other circumstances instead of being honest with yourself and say, I should have got my butt up and did something. Right. But yeah, I think that we're getting to a point where like that procrastination it's just kicking the can down the street, and
Mm-hmm.
before you know it, it's filled with rocks and all kinds of stuff, and now it's heavier to move
Yeah.
than dealing with it and doing what you got to do with it.
Yeah. Like, I think anybody who has been in school or does work sometimes, it's like procrastination it's a blessing and a curse because, like, even though you can avoid that thing, you still gonna have to do it eventually. Like, just get it over
Yeah,
with and then have all the free time that
yeah,
you want later on.
yeah.
And
I wasn't that student, man. I was like, listen, I'm gonna play outside first, then get this homework done,
yeah,
and then I
like,
fall asleep on the couch.
yeah, like, I feel like what at least it's helped me. I mean, I'm 21, gonna be 22 in a few months, and I feel like what's helped me is like I started like doing small stuff that I really, really didn't like doing, and then I kept forcing myself to get it done earlier and earlier and earlier. And eventually it's like I just do it. It's like it's not even a second thought that I have to do it because I know it's like it's got to get done, and I know I'm gonna still be busy later on. So why not
Let's
get
see.
one thing off my back that's easy
Mm-hmm.
and just not have that issue later? It's like, what's a good one? Cooking and doing the dishes. Oh my gosh. Like the dishes got to get done. They got to be clean.
Mm-hmm.
So pretty much any time that I cook, it's like, okay, you cook, you can eat your dinner. That's fine. You can do that. But as soon as you're done with eating, just do the dishes, Caleb. It takes 10 minutes, sometimes 15, depending on how many dishes you got. But like, it's just the small stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then with like the bigger, with school, with like bigger assignments, bigger essays, bigger projects, those come with time. And then like, I mean, I don't have my own house. I don't have my own place like that. But like with like cleaning, cooking, and like doing the stuff that you really don't want to do, it sometimes gets easier. It just depends. It's that mental mindset sometimes. Just having the out, as good as it is, can be useful. Sometimes we're tired.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we're stressed. Sometimes we know we want to do other stuff or get other stuff done. But
Mm-hmm.
just,
You,
it's discipline.
you said you said something that I want to tie everything to.
Okay.
You said that it takes, instead of doing massive stuff, you broke down the steps in order to get something accomplished.
Hmm.
Perhaps people need the truth in doses.
Yeah.
What do I mean by that?
It's like medicine. You don't take it all at once.
Yeah, like it's a lot. Was it a big pill to swallow? That's what they say,
Hmm.
right? Like it's just, and again, there's the shock value of it, right?
Hmm.
Of not of delaying, procrastinating to the truth,
Hmm.
not taking the proper steps. But if proper steps broken down into pieces, perhaps more individuals be would be more open
Hmm.
to hearing the truth, because there's no pressure to completely conform and turn 180.
Hmm.
You start probably doing, say we're 90 degrees, right? No, it's a 360. Let me do the math. There we go. So instead of being 180, you're doing like, I'm gonna do, you know, 200 degrees.
Hmm.
I'm doing slow compounding movements, small movements over time that could potentially change the way my worldview is.
Hmm.
But I feel like it has to be taken over time, not, and then now you're able to handle the truth, right? Like you're
Hmm.
able to do the dishes and do the food. You just jump in and do it. But it was built over time, taking the micro steps and the small steps to get to what you're looking to do. So
Hmm.
I think that's the cost of being countercultural
Hmm.
is required in small steps, in small doses of truth. Um, and some people won't take the medicine. They'll take a red pill and the blue pill and then go red pill.
And
And just like where they're at.
yeah, and I feel like with that, that can sometimes be the problem is that some people feel like that the small doses aren't enough sometimes to really change people's opinion. And that's why they shove all that truth in them or all that information in front of them to really get that swing.
Mm-hmm.
And more
Mm-hmm.
times than not, it does work, but at what cost?
Mm, that's good. That's good, Caleb. At what's the cost of taking the truth all at once?
Hmm.
Shoot, I think that's a good question for thought we can leave the listeners with, man. I think that's a good one. Um, Man, that was. I ain't gonna drop the mic, but I if I could knock it over, I would.
Yeah,
That was really good.
I
Um,
try.
man, I know you don't try, you just do, man. That's
Hmm.
good. Man, well, first of all, Caleb, thank you for jumping on this pod.
No, thank
I think
you.
it's just really important. Yeah, man, I think it's just important for us to have dialogue and conversation, particularly as you know, in your particular, you're Gen Z, right? You're a different
Yeah.
generation. Yeah, you're Gen Z. I'm a millennial.
Hmm.
And I think one of the challenges that most people don't hear are generations talking about their perception of what's going on in life right now. And I think I hope that our listeners really grasped or got to just hear a Gen Z and a millennial. All millennials ain't bitter. and and Gen Zers are not all in their computers.
Hmm.
They have thought provoking ideas and concepts and ideas because they're watching. And I really thank you, Kayla, for jumping on and having this conversation with me. Um, you know, I will keep we'll put your podcast in the show notes. Uh, Make sure you subscribe to his podcast. They have some incredible conversations in the Joker's Shadow, and he probably has one of the dopest covers I've seen on a podcast. I ain't gonna lie.
Don't thank me. Thank my mom for that, man. That was her, all
Well,
of her photography.
listen, that thing is dope. I mean, I'm like, ooh, I'm like, I need to rethink my whole podcast cover. When I saw it, I'm like, ooh, this is so good. But yeah, man. So again, thank you for jumping on. And ladies and gentlemen, we will catch you in the next episode of Shifts and Ladders. Talk to you. Peace.